Hi. It's been a hot minute. It's been so long that even my new Lionel control system showed up. It's like 100 years. Welcome back, folks! Hope you're having a great week. Or months. Last couple of months. This week, we're going to take a detailed look at my 27-foot by 12-foot train layout. For those of you who clicked on this video just to get the quick stats, I'm going to give those to you right now so you can swipe on and be on your way. Now, I know some of you came here just because you want the fast stats, and then you're going to move on. That's okay. No judgment. The layout is 12 feet wide by 27 feet long. The top two tracks are made out of Gargraves, and the main table is all fast track. All the switches are 072. This outside track is 096. The inside track is 089. The fast track on the main table is 072 and 060. Got it? You can move along now. I won't be offended. If you've been watching my channel for a while, I am deeply sorry it's taken me so long to get a video. If you're new to this channel, welcome. You didn't miss anything, except the fact that I use ultra prototypical 3-rail track for my trains. It's been a while, so let's get back to the basics. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. I did a layout overview back when I first made this channel, like 3 or 4 years ago. And I failed to give a proper update after I made all the changes over the last couple of years. Shame on me. Let's start with a general overview. The layout is 27 feet long by 12 feet wide and takes up pretty much all of the usable space in this room. So for those who have commented and suggested that I increase the size of the layout, yeah, it's not going to happen. You got to go to JD Stucks or Chris Montagna or Eric or one of the other YouTubers that have huge rooms. On my main table, I use Lionel Fast Track. If you watched my original layout overview, I explained the why. I originally put all this track on my floor, which is carpeted, and I wanted a rigid track that my kids wouldn't destroy when they stepped on it, because they were toddlers at the time. When I built the table, I just moved the track from the floor up onto the table. So I've always used this fast track. I had a huge investment in switches and track. I was not going to go back and replace all of it. But when I built the top loops, that gave me the opportunity to use a different type of track, and I used Gargraves track for the top loops. Gargraves track is a great track. It's much quieter. It's a little less expensive than Atlas track, and it performs really well. So I have no issue with either type of track here. My layout is arranged in this dog bone shape, which allows me to walk into the middle. I like this design because the trains can run around it. Sometimes it's pure chaos. The layout has 2 levels. The main tracks are placed on the main table, and there are 2 elevated tracks that I use for larger trains and those high-speed runs that you see in a lot of my videos. The layout might look kind of complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. It's just a series of loops, 4 main loops to be exact. One of the unique things about the center main line is it is a reversing line, which means that the train will pass through a switch, turn around, and the switch will automatically right itself as the train passes through in the other direction. Did you catch that? Did you see how that worked? When I was dreaming up this layout, my goal was to have maximum train action. Using loops allows me to accomplish just that. The center of the layout is comprised of a few passing lines and this large rail yard. The yard spans most of the length of the layout and allows me to park up to 3 trains. I've installed switches on the north and south ends of the yard so I can pull trains in and out as I need to. And all of these switches are 072 size switches, because I know that was the next question. On the south end of the rail yard is this crossover. It looks neat, but it's also functional. It allows me to reverse the direction of the trains on this big outside loop. Here you can see this little Western Maryland GP rolling through the crossover. It's just satisfying to watch. Towards the south end of the yard, you can see this Pensy signal that's just kind of sitting there with no lights on. Yeah, it's not wired up. A layout is never finished, especially mine. Opposite from the rail yard are 2 large double-track bridges. The smaller of the two is this Warren Truss style bridge, and that's about 4 feet long. And it's the Steubenville Bridge, this 8-foot double track bridge, that's really the centerpiece of the layout. Both of these bridges were custom built. The Steubenville Bridge has a neat story. There's a fellow O-gauger by the name of George, very well known in the O-gauge community, and he had this bridge commissioned to look like the Steubenville Railroad Bridge, the real thing. When I looked this up online, I just needed some giant 8-foot bridge, so I found it. So thank you, George, for dreaming up this idea so that we can all enjoy it on our own layouts. This bridge is really cool because not only does it look awesome, it allows 2 of my largest trains to go flying over this open gap. Both bridges are made of wood and reinforced with aluminum beams. You can park any train on this and it's not going to break. These things are super strong. The large 8-foot bridge does not lift up, so you either have to duck, crawl, or limbo underneath of it. I suggest limboing. And it looks really cool from like all the angles. One of my favorite ways to look at this bridge is to lay underneath of it and just stare up at the ceiling. I know, weird, right? Let's dive into some of the scenes on this layout. We're going to start on the north end of the layout. Way on the north end, in the corner of my layout, is one of my favorite scenes, and this is this little farm scene. Farming has been a part of my family for a long time. My grandparents were farmers, their grandparents were farmers, and this scene just pays a tribute to them in my own eyes. It's also a cozy scene, and who doesn't enjoy just a little countryside on the layout? When the trains are moving by it, it just gives this peaceful, serene feeling. If we stay up on the top level and move towards the rail yard, there's a grain silo over here. My dad actually built this for me as a gift. So it's not a kit. There was a family reunion we used to go to as kids, and up on the hill was a Norfolk Southern main line and this big grain silo. This is out in like Front Royal, Virginia. And I used to look at that scene and imagine having some sort of a train layout and incorporating it onto the train layout. So when my dad retired, instead of taking it easy, he got right to work making me this cool grain silo. So thanks, Dad. It looks awesome. Behind the silo, you can see my terrible backdrop where I stitched together some different pieces of paper. Maximum effort, RBP. Nice. You can see all the seams. Maybe one day I'll put a proper backdrop on here, or maybe not. One thing you may have noticed on this north end is that as we come off of that larger Steubenville Bridge, there is this double-track bridge that connects over to the hillside. It's not a prototypical bridge by any means, and I have mentioned this in other videos, but the wood that was used for this is walnut that came from my grandparents' farm. So I just talked about that farm scene, and when my grandparents passed away and we went and emptied out the barns, we found these planks of walnut that my grandfather had milled. So fortunately, my woodworker friend Lawrence, who helped me build this train layout, or basically built the table, he was able to create this double track bridge right here on this curve that connects that hillside to the main bridge. And it's a memory of my grandfather. It's a memory of working with Lawrence. It's just a really neat piece for me. My layout is divided into 3 main areas, and they're all named after one of my kids. The north end is named after my daughter Addison. You have the Clare Rail Yard, and then the town of Bailey. Looking over top of the town of Addison, it has a very industrial feel. Small town, there's a lot of train action over here. In fact, there's a little too much train action. I'm not liking how busy that back area is. Ugh, hang on, let's switch that up. Ah, better. Now you can see those 2 tracks that cut through the back side of town. Those are both functional tracks, by the way. The one in the back feeds into the yards. It can also be used as a pass-through. And the track that's closer is part of that inner loop. I am not a talented modeler. I am not a scratch builder. I don't have any of those types of chops. So all the buildings that you see in the town of Addison are by Woodland Scenics. It's all of the usuals. We have the door factory. We have the supply depot. We have the grocery store, the train station, the post office. Bob's General Store. I really like this one. But what I've been able to do is arrange these in a way where it creates these really neat little scenes. So here you see that loading dock for the door factory. Created this area where I have this truck, these little workers hanging out over here. I have these two little yard tracks that allow me to back trains into each one of these depot buildings. So it's kind of neat. It gives that feeling of loading and unloading freight trains and getting them in and out of there. Longtime collectors may notice that the street lamps in this area are inspired by vintage Lionel trains. So they are not prototypical looking lamps. They are MTH replicas of some of the early O-gauge accessories. My layout is a mutt. It's a pure stream of consciousness, in case you haven't noticed already. Over here, we have this little swing set. This actually works, believe it or not, but it's another thing that I haven't wired yet. More laziness. I've always liked this little railroad crossing area, and right next to it is the post office. On the porch of the post office, we have the classic Woodland Scenics, two guys playing chess. I think just about everyone has this on their train layout. And just a lot of little things going on here. You know, people standing outside, moving around, loading things up. I just wanted to create a sense of busyness on this side. If you stand all the way at the north end of the layout and you look down over the whole table, you can really see some of the depth and the way that the trains move in and about these areas. Let's move down through the rail yard. We have a couple more scenes up on the hill above the rail yard. So one is this classic MTH dry goods building. We zoom in here and you can see these guys working. So one guy's dragging stuff, the other guy's yelling at him about something, and then this other dude just kind of standing here with whatever that is in his hand. It's probably not even, I don't even know. I think that's like a railroad worker. I just sort of stuck there. Yeah, I don't think he knows what he's doing. Moving down, we get to another one of my favorite scenes. And that's this Lego town. This works surprisingly well on the train layout. It's not prototypical. If you've ever built a Lego creator building, they're stuffed with details. You have all these people, all this activity happening on the streets here. And then you'll notice two custom figures. These were made by a friend of mine who I met at York. And one of these is me, and one of these represents my daughters. It's kind of cool. Here we are standing on the sidewalk watching the trains go by. I like this guy out in front of the bookstore with the flowers. It's like he's trying to flirt with this woman, but she just wants to read her book. Sounds like my wife. When I first designed the layout, I wanted a way to store trains on the layout. And you can see by the length of this rail yard just how many trains you can park in here. I have all these passenger cars in here right now and this military train. But then I started this YouTube channel and started collecting all these trains. So now I have trains everywhere. It kind of backfired on me. On that middle line though is one of the only accessories that actually works on my layout. And that is this fast track signal crossing. See how it actually worked when the train passed through? It's a beautiful thing. As we make our way around the south end of the layout, we're heading towards this old fireplace. I have to talk about the fireplace because everyone asks about it. So yes, there was a fireplace here. When my wife and I moved into this house, it was capped. So the fireplace is non-functional. So as we make our way into the south end, you'll see that the trains on the main line disappear into a tunnel. They will come out in the town of Bailey, which we'll get to in just a minute. This little mountain right here is the last of the mountains that I made on the layout. At this point, I remember I was listening to meditation videos to keep my sanity. So I call this mountain Zen Mountain. Up on top of this mountain is a radio tower by Corber Models. I took some creative liberties here to put my RBP initials onto the tower. I know it's supposed to say WRBP, but it's not a real radio tower. Sorry. There are some of the original scenes from the layout, which is this little cabin scene. and the original mountain. I used to call this the Big Rock Candy Mountain. And this is literally just plaster cloth with a bunch of paint on it. When I redid the layout, I left this mountain just the way it was because it's a reminder of growth. This is where I started, and I've learned a lot from watching other modelers and talking to people. Like I didn't even know what sculpt-a-mold was when I first built this train layout. You may notice these walnut ridges again, so same thing as the other side of the layout. I really like these scenes right here as these trains come around. And this is the point where they will enter into the Warren Bridge and then make their way through that larger Steubenville Bridge. Underneath this area is a water scene. Got a couple guys fishing. I love fishing. Actually, a lot of the reason I have not been doing videos is because I've been out doing fishing and other things this summer. Got some folks on boats hanging out, watching the trains pass overhead. I always thought it was neat the way the lights from the trains reflect off the water. If you've ever worked with this realistic water stuff though, make sure you really seal the base because this stuff will go everywhere. It's a giant pain to work with. Behind the water feature, you can see 2 tunnel portals, and that's where the main line comes out and that inner main line comes out. So here's where the trains that have disappeared return to head into the town of Bailey. And before we talk about that town, let's look at this train station in the back that's kind of tucked back here. This train station came off of my dad's original train layout. We did some redesign on his layout and added some yard areas, and it just took away the usable space for the train station. So he donated it to my layout, and now it's here. Let's look at the bridge a little bit more. It sits right over top and connects that south end to the town of Bailey. So you have trains passing above and going below. Another great area for train action. Maximum train action. And then we move into the town of Bailey. This has not changed. This has been the same since I first built the layout. The same buildings, the same cars, the same little siding. Got some people walking on the street and look, well, you can tell one of my daughters has been down here because they put this little Superman on top of this building. I didn't even see that when I recorded this. I'm going to keep it there. 2 more features in this area that are connected but don't actually work. One is this signal where everything is lit up. So I'm sure the train engineer sees that and just freaks out. And then you have this crossing signal, which is also not wired up. A train layout is never done. I like how the trains can pass in the foreground and the background of this particular scene. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. You have the trains passing over the buildings on the hill. There's this neat way of looking towards the north end with the bridge in the background. And then the same if you're looking towards the south end. Just a lot of really neat opportunities for cool scenes and a lot of neat train passes in this area. And at the base of this big mountain is this little hobo scene. Oh, it's missing a key component here. Hang on. Uh-huh. Got it. That's better. Look at this guy just creeping on these poor guys having their campfire. And last but not least is another one of my favorite scenes on the layout, and that's where the trains pass above and below, right over the town of Bailey. So you can see these trains coming over the bridge. I use this all the time. And again, if you're new, welcome, and check out some of my other videos where you will see this scene reused and reused and reused again and again. Right over here, you can see my control station. So there's the 3 main transformers I use for the layout. We'll talk about control systems another time. There's some changes coming in that area with Lionel's new control system. So there it is, the 2024 RBP Trains O-Gauge train layout overview. I hope this gave you a closer look, or maybe a broader look, at how the layout has been designed and some of the little things that are on it. As always, a huge thank you to all of my subscribers and everyone who's been supporting this channel. My name is Chris, and this is RBP Trains. We'll see you next time.